What's going on, fight fans? I'm back here with another video here set for you guys. Gonna be going in depth and giving my predictions and picks for the UFC 314 card. Absolutely stacked from head to bottom. This card has a lot of great fights, honestly, great matchups. On either side. Unfortunately, we're not getting the Carlos Prates fight because last time out on the telecast, they did say that Jeff Neal pulled out of the fight due to, I believe, like an illness or an injury or something like that. So I don't believe Carlos Prates is going to be matched up with somebody else on this card. I think he's going to be matching up against somebody else on a later card, or probably maybe next month, if not UFC 315, probably UFC 316. Rumors is potentially him versus Ian Gary would be a banger matchup. But with this card, for the first fight that I'm going to be talking about, and again, I'm not going to be going through every single fight on this card because some of these fights on this card I don't care about. But the first fight that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about Gore versus Marco Tulio. Marco Tulio is a middleweight prospect who just KO'd Ihor Pretoria, and man, poor man. I mean, just moment of silence. Poor Ihor Pretoria, man. He just got matched up against dudes that just put him out, man. I don't know, but shout out to him. He's a man. He's a thug. He actually got in there and actually went against dudes that are not easy to go against. And Gore, who is 2-2 in the UFC so far, is on a 2-fight win streak against Josh Fram and Antonio Tricoli, and he beat them both by guillotine. Both of those guys are pretty trash, and I don't think they're with the UFC as of right now. So I think Marco Tulio is actually going to KO Gore, another body to add to his resume, some more experience for Marco Tulio, who's had some pretty decent record so far for himself. And I think he'll get the job done against Gore. I think this will be pretty much what you expect it to be when you see this matchup being made. And moving on up the card, we have Sumudaerji versus Mitch Raposo. Mitch Raposo, in his UFC debut, went against Andre Lima by a split decision. He lost that fight. Very, very close and competitive, but Andre Lima is right now a surging prospect in the flyweight division. And Sumudaerji is on a 3-fight losing streak. He lost to Matt Schnell. He lost to Tim Elliott, both of them by sub. And then also the last time out that he fought against Charles Johnson was a very, very competitive fight on the feet. He lost to him as well. But the guys that Sumudaerji has been losing to, they're actually like right there to the rankings, or they're barely just in the rankings, or like 13, 14, 15, just out of the rankings. Charles Johnson is always number 15 or like number 16, 17 ranked in the flyweight division in the UFC. So he's going to pretty like good competition. Mitch Raposo is a dude that's up and coming, trying to get his feet wet in the UFC, young guy. And against Sumudaerji, man, I'm gonna go with Sumudaerji on this one. I think his stand up is a lot more complete compared to Mitch Raposo. He has a lot of experience in the UFC as well, and I just think as of right now with his experience, he's just more of a complete fighter against Mitch Raposo. So I'm gonna go with Sumudaerji. And moving on up the card, we have Cedrica Dumas versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Cedricus Dumas. Cedricus Dumas is coming off a win against Dennis Tululin. He's kind of been on and off really with his career, that being Cedric in the UFC. Before that, he got finished by Nursultan Rozaboyev, which was kind of like because I believe there was some like controversy with like the back of the headshots. But Mikhail has been in the UFC for quite some time. Honestly, as of right now, he's 1-4 in his last 5 fights on a 3-fight losing streak. He lost to Kyle Barajo, he lost to Michel Pereira, he lost to Kevin Holland and Sher Magomedov. So he's been against some real tough competition, and every single time he's in there, he's always making it scrappy. He's always making it tough. And with him going against dudes that are like contenders, like actual contenders in the future for the UFC, that I think that are actually names. Kyle Barajo, with the fighting nerds, is potentially, one fight away to be able to get a title fight. Michel Pereira, while his cardio is absolute trash, his power is absolutely insane. Kevin Holland, that was a great stand-up fight with each other, but it was kind of like a weird armbar situation, but he still got the victory over. And Sher Magomedov is an absolute sniper on the feet, but he kept it really competitive, that being Mikhail Oleksiejczuk with Sher Magomedov, and made it really close and made it uncomfortable for a lot of times for Sher. I'm going to go with Mikhail Oleksiejczuk over this one against Cedric Dumas. While Dumas is long and rangy and he can create some type of problems, I don't think he's to the tier or level of a Kyle Barajo, Michel Pereira, Kevin Holland, Sher Magomedov. I think those guys are actually like better. They're actually pretty decent fighters who have been in the rankings. They have a lot of also experience. Well, especially now, they have a lot of experience against other competitors, and they lost as well. That being Michel Pereira and Sher Magomedov recently. Um, I actually rate Oleksiejczuk pretty well, and I think Shadrish Dumas is kind of. I mean, that win against Dennis Tululin, that doesn't really show me anything, bro. So, yeah, moving on up the card, we have Darren Elkins versus Juliana Rosa. Man, yo, your boy Darren Elkins, man, 40-year-old dude, 15 years in the game for the UFC. As of right now, is on a 2-fight win streak against TJ Brown and Daniel Pineda. Really only fights once a year as of right now. Kind of been inactive, but you know what you get with Darren Elkins. You get the violence, you get the blood, you get scrappy mixes up, you get the comeback wins against a lower level competition that are like, trying to get past Darren Elkins. They get past that. But Juliana Rosa is another vet as well. He's on a 2-fight win streak as of right now, both by guillotine. Not the only guy on this card who has a 2-fight win streak by guillotine. Shout out to Tresean Gore, even though I think he's going to get sparked out. But the 2 guillotines that Juliana Rosa got was against Ricardo Ramos and Christian Rodriguez, a guy that I was kind of like actually highly touting this past weekend. Because, I thought Christian Rodriguez was actually going to get past Mezequiel Acosta. But he couldn't. He just can really only beat prospects who are really young in their career and hasn't really have any type of experience. So, I mean, is the C-Rod win actually any good? But I'm going to go with the younger dude with Juliana Rosa. I think this is going to be a scrap. Both of these guys are actually well-versed with the grappling as well. So I expect blood and violence and some entertainment in this one. But I'm going to go with the younger and fresher guy who's been more active as of recently with Juliana Rosa over Darren Elkins. And moving on up the card, we have, speaking of wily vets, we have Jim Miller versus Chase Hooper. One of those taking them out to pasture, those old dogs that you got. Oh, Yeller. You're going to take him out the pasture, and I think this is pretty much what it's going to be, man. Wiley vet, Jim Miller coming off a sub win by guillotine. A lot of guillotine wins by sub. A lot of these guys have on this card for somehow, some way. To Damon Jackson, another OG in the UFC who's really bad, man. I don't know how he's still in the UFC as of right now. You got Chase Hooper, who is a young, fresh fighter on a 2-fight win streak, both by subs. Got a really nice win over Vyacheslav Borshev, who I rate highly, especially with his, takedown defense being really good and his striking, him being known as a great kickboxer, and he beat him by Dar's choke. And then you got Clay Guida, another guy that I don't know why is still in the UFC, but he still is, and he got him out of there by armbar. So I expect the same thing for Chase Hooper, to just keep on the streak, get these old wily vets out of there, get the experience that they have in the game. See some things that they can be able to show him, I guess, in the fight. But Jim Miller is still tough. He's still okay on the feet. He's just older and can be able to take punishment as well. I mean, he got done up by Bobby Green before the matchup with Damon Jackson. So, I think Chase Hooper is going to get this one done by submission. Moving on up the card, we have Yan Xiaoan versus Werner Jandiroba, the classic striker versus grappler matchup. Yan Xiaoan, she lost to Zhang Weili in a very, I can't even say close and competitive fight. Zhang Weili did win the fight, but it was very competitive, especially on the feet with the scrambles. Zhang Weili had a submission in, and she pretty much won the fight, really by sub, but the referee didn't really even want to count it by sub. But it was whatever. She won all the 5 rounds with Zhang Weili. Good experience, I think, for her. Last time out, she got a decision win over Tabitha Ritchie. And Werner Jandiroba's on a 4-fight win streak as of right now. Last time out, she got a win by armbar over Amanda Lemos in her fight night, main event that she had. She had some other matchups like Tatiana Suarez that were supposed to happen before Tatiana Suarez got the shot for the belt. But it turned out not to happen. So as of right now, this is pretty much just a number 1 contenders match. As you can see, Yan Xiaoan is pretty much number 1 in the division as of right now, and Werner Jandiroba being number 3. If it stays on the feet, I think Yan Xiaoan, especially if she gets her takedown defense corrected, especially from the matchup with Zhang Weili, I think this is going to be a pretty much easy fight for Yan Xiaoan. I think she's going to be able to dominate and get over Werner Jandiroba. But if Jandiroba gets a takedown and she gets into her world in terms of the scrabbling, I don't know, man. This was a tough one. I'm going to go with Werner Jandiroba. She's more on a streak as of right now. Yan Jianan already fought for the belt. Maybe she gets the experience with Zhang Weili that she had, tested her will with the grappling. She can be able to, shake off Werner Jandiroba with the takedown defense that she has and keeps things on the feet. But I just think Werner Jandiroba is just on another level compared to with the grappling. So I'm going to go with Werner Jandiroba, either by decision or submission over Yan Jianan. And moving on up the card, we have Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson, an absolute banger matchup between these two guys. Dan Ige saved the fight with Diego Lopes, as we all know, literally on the same day. Gangster move by him, 100%. Lost that fight against Diego Lopes. Looked pretty sloppy, but Diego Lopes looked like he was gassing towards the end, and Dan Ige started to get the momentum towards the end of that fight, potentially winning that third round, maybe even that second round, but he didn't look as well because, he literally just got in on the fight the same day. And then after that, he got the matchup between Lerone Murphy, and he lost a close decision with Lerone Murphy, even though he did get the knockdown in that first round against Lerone. And Sean Woodson is on a 7-fight win streak as of right now. He last time out beat Fernando Padilla by KO. He's beaten the likes of Charles Jourdain, Alex Caceres, Yusuf Zalal before he got into his streak, and he got out of the UFC, and now he's back, and he's looking like an absolute new fighter. Sean Woodson has been on an absolute tear. The range, I think, is going to be something. And not only with the range that Sean Woodson has the advantage over Dan Ige, he also has some power, some pop into his hands. So it's not like Sean Woodson is just going to be touching up Dan Ige and trying to just keep away from the power that Dan Ige has, because we all kind of know what Dan Ige is. Has power in his hands, has pretty decent kickboxing and boxing. But Sean Woodson, I think, is just too rangy. And not only is he too rangy and long for Dan Ige, he also has some pop to be able to really stave off Dan Ige on the feet. So I'm going to go with Sean Woodson by decision in that one. And to the main card we go, and we have Nikita Krylov versus Dominic Reyes. Nikita Krylov hasn't fought in about 2 years, but is still on a 3-fight win streak. He has the win over Alexander Gustafsson, where he was pretty much on his retirement bed. Volkanovski looks like a pretty decent win, and Ryan Spann has looked, how he usually looks, very inconsistent in his career. And then you have Dominic Reyes, who really has bounced back in his career tremendously after all the finishes that he started to suffer after his loss, or quote-unquote loss, really was a win against John Jones. He's on a 2-fight win streak, 2 finishes with Dustin Jacoby, which I really do rate as a really highly touted win, and Anthony Smith, which I think was kind of more of a layup for him to be able to get on a win streak. But with Nikita Krylov, I think, even though with the long layout that he does have, I think he's going to get a finish over Dominic Reyes. I think it will be very much so a lot more competitive, what a lot of other people think, because of the momentum and the win streak and the confidence that Dominic Reyes is carrying with himself right now, especially with the layoff that Nikita Krylov has been happening, dealing with injuries and also canceled bouts as well. But yeah, I'm going to go with Nikita Krylov in this one. I think he gets it done by finish, probably TKO. Against Dominic Reyes, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dominic Reyes pulled this off as well, especially with the long layoff that Nikita Krylov has been away with. And moving on up the card, we have Yair Rodriguez versus the UFC debut, finally, of Patricio Pitbull. Yair Rodriguez is on a 2-fight losing streak as of right now. He had the interim belt, and he lost the title unification bout with Alexander Volkanovski, and he got dominated on the ground by him. And then after that, he had the loss against Brian Ortega, where I believe he had Brian Ortega hurt in that first round, and then they went into the second round, and Brian Ortega then cinched in a submission over him, both by finish. So it's been kind of rough. But Yair has taken a year off, maybe to retool, get some things better, especially in terms of the jiu-jitsu and the grappling for himself. But Patricio Pitbull, man, he has beaten Michael Chandler before. He's lost to Sergio Pettis very recently, but he's been reigning over Bellator for quite some time. He's coming off a KO win over Jeremy Kennedy. The competition in terms of what it is in the UFC and Bellator is not the same, even though there is some good competition in Bellator. He's been a champion for quite some time. He's reigned, I want to say, like 2 or 3 times in Bellator, but the competition isn't as stiff, and Yair Rodriguez is a problem, especially on the feet. and he's taking a year off. He's trying to be able to retool himself, get himself a lot more better with some of the things that he's lacking in his game. Patricio Pitbull is an absolute marauder. He has a lot of power in his hands, but it is later in his career. Finally, he's getting himself in the UFC. I think he's like in his late 30s. It's a tough matchup, really tough matchup in my honest opinion. But I am going to go with Yair Rodriguez. I'm going to go with Yair Rodriguez. He needs this win more than Patricio does win, even though Patricio would be a nice UFC debut, especially against a name like Yair Rodriguez, being number 5 ranked in the featherweight division as of right now. It would put him up there, like real high in that division, to be able to potentially even jump in a title fight, because he's already been title reigner in Bellator for quite some time. But I think Yair is making the adjustments, getting into this fight. He has the striking to be able to really just throw things from literally out of nowhere, and I think that's going to be messing up the mindset of Patricio Pitbull and not really knowing what is going to be coming his way in terms of the kicks or the punches or anything on the feet. And moving on to the feature fight on this card, we have something that, in my opinion, is a lot more easier to be able to predict. We have the man that is absolutely on fire as of right now. Gene Silva is on a tear in the UFC as of right now. He's undefeated in the UFC. He just came off defeating Melsik Baksadarian in 1 round literally 2 months ago. He has wins over Charles Jourdain, Drew Dober. Even though Drew Dober just got finished in the first round against Manuel Torres, before that finish, he had a career-long type of resume where he's absolutely a lot of bangers. So then we have him matched up against Bryce Mitchell, who's coming off a TKO finish against Kron Gracie. In my opinion, a layup for Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell is very well versed in the BJJ and grappling game. So he can create problems, especially with the ground game with John Silva. John Silva has gotten taken down by another BJJ black belt, such as Charles Jourdain. Even though Charles Jourdain didn't have that type of control or threaten with any type of submissions that potentially Bryce Mitchell could have. I think Bryce Mitchell is a better grappler, in my opinion, compared to a Charles Jourdain. So that is something that John Silva definitely has to be able to worry about. But the kicker for me in this fight is that Bryce Mitchell has 2 losses in his career, and his 2 losses were against Josh Emmett and Ilia Topuria. Guys with knockout power in the featherweight division matched up against Bryce Mitchell. Usually when they match up against him, he gets knocked out or finished some type of way. I believe Ilia Topuria got a submission victory over Bryce Mitchell, and Josh Emmett, we already know the highlight KO that he had over Bryce Mitchell. So I think John Silva, even though the threat of the takedown is something to be able to worry about, I think he's going to get the job done, and I think he's going to get another highlight KO over Bryce Mitchell. And to the co-main event we go, and we have, honestly, in my honest opinion, the hardest fight to be able to call on this card, besides the Yair and Patricio Pitbull fight, Michael Chandler versus Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. Michael Chandler coming off the loss against a rematch with Charles Oliveira with a long layoff, with him honestly wanting to be able to get the fight against Conor McGregor and continuously calling that fight that he wants to be able to have with him. He's already lost to Gaethje. He's lost to Poirier, so he's a name. He has entertainment value. He brings in a lot of violence into a lot of his fights. So a lot of people are always entertained watching Michael Chandler and knowing that he's on a card. They know that they're going to get an absolute banger fight, whether it be a KO his way or the other way. And you have Paddy the Baddy, who is undefeated in the UFC. His last win out was a submission over Bobby Green. He has wins over Tony Ferguson, but even though, Tony Ferguson was pretty much washed by that time that he got to Paddy Pimblett, this one's a tough one. Michael Chandler has the power, even though he's hurt a lot of other fighters, such as Olin Oliveira, such as a Gaethje, such as a Poirier. He's hit him with some heavy shots that's really rocked those type of opponents. Paddy the Baddy, a lot of the times when it comes to striking battles, or whenever it's on the feet, he leaves his chin up right there to be able to hit. And I believe that he has been working a lot more better with his, striking game and his stand-up. But if Michael Chandler is able to touch your chin with something, either he's going to wobble Paddy, even though he has eaten a lot of heavy shots that he's taken from other people, but I don't think he's ever fought somebody with the explosiveness and power like a Michael Chandler, even though Chandler, again, he's hurt a lot of people, but he hasn't put anybody down, unless it was Tony Ferguson with that freaking front kick right to the chin, but that was absolutely insane. Another thing that we have to be able to worry about is Michael Chandler last time out when he went against Oliveira. Oliveira was absolutely out wrestling Michael Chandler. Something that I didn't think Chandler was really taking into consideration was Oliveira's ground game and his grappling. Very underrated wrestling by Charles Oliveira that he does have. Paddy is a lot better with the wrestling, with the grappling, with the jiu-jitsu. Not better than Oliveira, but I do think that his wrestling and his grappling is something to be able to take of note, even though Michael Chandler does have a background in wrestling and he can be able to prevent some type of the takedowns. If this stays on the feet, I think Michael Chandler gets the job done. I don't think Paddy the Baddy, with the wins that he has, I think this is a very big step up for him. Even though Michael Chandler could be on the downward swing of his career, and he's getting older. He's not going to be the same fighter. You can see how he was fighting last time out, even though in that fifth round he looked absolutely insane and damn near got the finish over Oliveira. But if it goes to the ground, Michael Chandler has staved off Oliveira with the, grappling, with the jiu-jitsu. He didn't get subbed his last time out. He did get subbed by Dustin Poirier, though. This is tough, and I think Paddy's BJJ is a lot better than Poirier, but Paddy doesn't have the stand-up that Poirier has. I'm going to go with Michael Chandler. I think Michael Chandler is going to knock Paddy Pimblett the fuck out cold because, yes, Paddy has taken shots on the chin very well. I think he might get touched with something in this fight, and I think if it stays on the feet for as long as it does, I think Michael Chandler will get the job done. But if it goes to the ground, either way, it would be really impressive if this stays as a stand-up fight and Paddy just wins the route. That would actually really impress me. Really, really impress me. But I think Paddy is obviously going to be gunning for the submission, gunning for the takedowns, and getting them on Michael Chandler, while Oliveira did get the takedowns and get the top control and get the back of Michael Chandler. He wasn't able to get the finish over Michael Chandler. And Poirier did, but Poirier has way better boxing and stand-up compared to Paddy the Baddy. So I'm going to go with Michael Chandler in the co-main event. And moving on to the main event, we have Alexander the Great Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes has been on an absolute bender. It hasn't even been 2 years already, and he's been on 6 fights already in the UFC on a 5-fight win streak. Made that absolutely great impression first time out that he got against Movsar Evloev, finishing him multiple times, especially on the ground. Something that Movsar Evloev is known to be able to have the advantage over most of the opponents that he goes against. And then, Diego Lopes goes on an absolute streak, finishing Sadiq Youssef. Then goes against the matchup with Dan Ige. And yeah, he did tire out against Dan Ige, but he did get the victory over Dan Ige. And then he had the near knockout over Brian Ortega, but still gets the decision victory over Brian Ortega, where he completely outclassed Ortega on the feet. And you have Alexander Volkanovski, the former reigning king of the featherweight division, the belt being now in vacancy because Ilia Topuria has left the featherweight division and is now moving to the lightweight division. Volkanovski, man, what can I be able to say? As of recently, he had the loss in a very close and competitive fight against Islam the first time out. Then he went back to featherweight to be able to fight for defend for his belt against Yair Rodriguez. Got the finish over him. Then the late replacement fight that he got over Islam Makhachev, where he got head kicked, KO'd in a very, very tough sight to be able to see. And then he had the absolutely nasty KO, even though he was actually looking pretty good on the feet, but it was very, very tentative and worried about whatever was coming his way by Ilia Topuria, because obviously you have to be worried about whatever is coming your way when you're going against Ilia Topuria. So Alexander Volkanovski, thankfully, has taken a year off of his career to be able to just recalibrate, get fresh, get better and feel better and recover well from the, back-to-back TKO KO losses that he's had against great competition, in my honest opinion. That being Ilia and Islam, my honest opinion, the 1 and 2 pound-for-pound fighters as of right now. But really what it comes down to me is that Diego Lopes is a young and up-and-coming fighter. Alexander Volkanovski is not old, but he is getting old. He's about to be 37 years old, or he is already. Old, wily vet, still on top of his game. If there's anybody that's going to be able to take out a, a virtuoso performance, a renaissance performance, back to where he was in his prime, Alexander Volkanovski is going to be the guy to be able to do it. The one thing that obviously is to worry, especially that first round, is that Diego Lopes carries a lot of power and a lot of explosivity. And already Volk has been finished twice already. So if he gets finished again by Diego Lopes, his chin is probably already done. And it's probably going to be over for his career, pertaining to him to be able to fight for a championship belt again. And if it comes to that, I think he might as well just retire, because I don't see Volkanovski just standing around, just not really want to be able to get back to the belt and win it again. So the one thing that does worry me a lot about Diego Lopes is his gas tank. While he is very explosive and he does carry a lot of power, he does tend to tire out in the later rounds of his fight. So he's going to be able to conserve a lot more energy, especially in this one against Volkanovski, somebody who's literally can go for how long it ever needs to be able to go. His cardio and gas tank is bar none one of the best in the UFC. And with that being said, I think this is going to be a competitive matchup. But if it goes past the first round and into the deep waters, my money is going to be on Alexander Volkanovski, and that's who I have winning the UFC featherweight title again. In this matchup, I think he's going to be able to be defensively sound. He's going to be able to recover from the knockouts that he had before, hopefully. And I think he's just going to be able to just beat up Diego Lopes, especially on the ground. I think that we get a fourth round TKO on the ground finish, even though there is somewhere with Diego Lopes and his BJJ on the ground. That's something that is not something to just not worry about. You definitely have to worry about him on the ground. But I just think Alexander Volkanovski has just more experience. He's been in this game for quite some time, and I think he's hungry to be able to get his belt back. And I know that if he gets finished or loses this fight with Diego Lopes, I think that he knows that this is probably his last chance to be able to claim that belt once again. So I have Alexander Volkanovski beating Diego Lopes in the fourth round by ground and pound TKO in the main event. Like this video if you obviously like this video. Comment your opinions on what you think is going to happen on this card, that being UFC 314. Unfortunately, we're not getting the Carlos Prates versus Jeff Neal matchup. That matchup was going to be an absolute banger in my opinion, knowing how Jeff Neal fights and how Carlos Prates go to war absolutely between each other. Maybe they make that matchup later down in another UFC pay-per-view card, or maybe, again, like I said earlier, the matchup between Ian Gary and Carlos Prates is absolutely welcome in my opinion. But yeah, comment your opinions. Again, who do you think is going to win on this card? How do you think it happens? What do you think is going to happen? And subscribe, UFC fans. Subscribe, because I'm here. I'm making these videos just for you guys, and obviously this has to be a mutual thing where, vice versa, you give that subscribe button to be able to see more of this fantabulous content that I'm going to be providing for you guys. Thank you guys again for watching again, and peace.